lovely people, Cherries here, back with my December Plan With Me video, which is also the last monthly bullet journal setup for this year. Again, wow, it's that time already. I know it's the busiest time for many of us, and I hope you have been doing well this month. If you're new here, I also want to welcome you to this beautiful growing community. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more art and bullet journal content from me. But without further ado, let's begin our December bullet journal setup. You can grab your bullet journals, planners, or digital planning system and hang out with me today. If not, and you're here for some creative inspiration, get comfy or maybe with some snacks, relax, and I hope you enjoy this one. I'm having my usual tools here, my Lila Journals dot grid notebook, watercolors for my painted illustrations, and a number 6 round brush and a detail brush. All of these supplies are listed below on the video description, along with other information like discount codes and my sticker shop, so feel free to check them out. You are also allowed to use whatever coloring medium you like to draw or paint illustrations if you'd like to recreate them on your journal. First things first is preparing some colors that I'd like to use. It is great to have a color palette ready before you start painting, but you can also build them as you go through the process. The initial set of colors I picked for this painting are a mix of sap green, viridian, and black for the evergreen shade. We also have permanent red, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and Van Dyke brown. Ooh, I also have burnt umber, but I just forgot to pick it up, but you can see me using it later. If you don't have these specific colors on your watercolor set, you can use different combinations to achieve a similar shade. Now we can start our painting. I always like to create a cover page. It's kind of setting the whole mood for the coming month, and the theme I will be doing is wintry streets. If you've been here for a while, I usually do cozy indoor themes. December last year, I did paint a couple snowy landscapes, so this time I'm going fully outdoors, literally out of comfort zone. Also, I live in a tropical country. I haven't experienced snow in my life, so it's nice to somehow include illustrations even just in my journal. Anyway, this is a full page painting, and since we are working with watercolors, we want to do the foreground elements first. So I started painting some red bows and baubles that are part of the exterior decoration around the houses. I'm using a small detail brush, so it's easier to cover small elements like this and also be able to control the amount of water loaded on the brush. After that, we are painting the evergreen garlands and Christmas trees. And as you can see, I already have pencil sketches beforehand, and I always recommend sketching your whole illustration. There's no shame in doing that before painting because most of the time it helps us achieve the desired composition. If you're doing loose paintings and just playing around, well, you can be carefree too, but when you're a beginner, sketches are very helpful. When we are done with the decorations, actually not done yet because we still need to add shadows, but we will come back to it later. In the meantime, we are painting the exterior of the houses, starting with the base color of the walls using a light wash of yellow ochre. I'm just painting the wall areas, but it's okay if your brush goes over the windows and doors a little bit, since we're also going to use warm colors for them. We will have 3 visible buildings here, so we are going to work our way from the left side, which is also the nearest in this angle. The appearance of these buildings are inspired by the charming small towns that look so beautiful, especially during winter time. These are places like Cotswolds village in England, small towns in Germany, Austria. These are the famous places I know of, but please leave a comment below if you're from somewhere that has a similar place that you'd like people to see, or a favorite country or spot that you want to visit during winter. There's going to be snow covering parts of the houses, of course, so we are skipping these areas. You can also make use of the colors of our page for the snow, but if you happen to paint on them with other colors, we can use gouache paint over, which you will see me doing later. But for now, we are painting the windows and doors of the first house using burnt umber and burnt sienna, and already adding the shadows using Van Dyke brown. We also have a couple steps below the door. We're just finishing the first house by painting the remaining parts. We are using the same colors, and while the initial layer is still wet, we can actually add some textures by applying a pigmented paint, or basically taking paint straight from the pan and apply them quickly on our wet layer. And this will dry nicely. I usually recommend waiting for the current layer to dry first before adding another layer to prevent bleed through or ghosting. Sometimes this really depends on the paper surface and thickness. The paper of this notebook holds up to watercolors pretty well, so I'm able to do this and not worry about ghosting or bleed through, but still with caution, of course. But if you want to add sharp details, like here for example, we are painting stone-like textures with darker lines using the tip of our brush or the small detail brush, we surely need the previous layer to be completely dry first. Otherwise, the paint will feather and won't look sharp. Then we can also add a bit of brown shading so it doesn't look flat. And that's also a great tip when painting. It gives more life to our illustration. Alright, now we are painting these classic street lamps using black for every part except for the light inside each of them. It's pretty quick to paint these, just starting with a triangular cover, diagonal lines that hold the glass panes, and the bulb holder. Then we have our posts that resemble letter T, and do another lamp hanging below. For the lighting, we are using yellow and a tinge of red just around the corner and keeping the center light. Before we move on to the next structure, I wanted to paint a red mailbox here. My main reference is the Royal Mailbox. We can actually paint this from the get-go when we were painting the decor, but it's okay as long as we didn't paint anything on top of it. We are now doing the middle house, so this is the furthest, and unlike the first one we did, this is going to look blurry and hazy because of the snow, so we don't really use the same consistency of paint like we had on the first house. We are just using very light consistency by mixing more water to our paint and loading our brush just enough for the specific area. So we're doing a very simple house design. Actually, it looks more like a public building, but anyhow, we don't really need to focus on the details. This is a pretty quick step, so we move on already to the next one. This has a chimney and a gable roof. And we're just painting the walls in a similar way using the colors we used on the first one. We're painting the doors with burnt sienna as well, just to make everything look balanced. Ooh, let's suppose there's an alleyway here, so there's another building across the first house we painted, but we're only painting a little bit of the exterior. The nearer the building is, the more we apply darker colors to achieve a realistic perspective for this. Let's quickly go back to the roof here to add details and shading. Then the next thing we're doing, this is the fun part, it is to paint the snow using this white gouache from Mia Arts. I got this huge pack for a while now since I easily run out of white when painting with gouache. If you are not familiar with gouache, it is described as opaque watercolor. It is highly pigmented and gives you a great coverage. You can easily activate it unlike acrylic paint. So we're simply using this to cover all the snowy areas on the houses, on Christmas trees, and on the ground. Although I can use the color of the paper for the ground, I am still going to paint it to cover the dots somehow. The reason is so I don't need to do much editing when I decide to turn it into an art print, but looking at it again while working on this video, the dots are still quite visible, but it's okay. And like I said before, we are coming back to the trees and garlands to add shadows. We are just mixing a bit of black to our green mix and apply this around the snowy parts. Then we are also painting some shadows here and there using Payne's Gray or a cool tone gray. We are painting shadows and trails on the snowy ground using diluted Van Dyke brown. And of course, there has to be snow falling, so we're just tapping the tip of our brush to add these. Now it's time to write our December title using our black pen on the space above with a simple font style. And that's our cover painting done. I really love how this one turned out and I hope you love it too. But now let's focus on the other side of the spread to create my December calendar. I printed this colored paper. I was aiming more for a gingerbread shade, but it turned out peachy and similar to the color I used last year. But it's fine. So we covered the whole page. And in terms of the layout, we are using the permanent red watercolor to paint the background of the days. Yes, that's right. I did this with caution though, since the copy paper I used to print is very thin. It is 70 GSM. But what I did is making the consistency of watercolor to be very pigmented or less water. It's almost like gouache with opaque consistency. Also, we are not painting the whole background box because we will be painting this part with the white gouache to create a snowpack. So we have a thick formation here on top. We also have kind of dripping on both sides. And then on the last row of our calendar grid, we are painting little dots of snow falling as well above and a bit on the sides. and go back to the red background to add a darker shade for the shadows so the snowpack pops more nicely. Now we can draw the grid lines using a black pen. I actually made a mistake here because I started on Monday, which is the 2nd of December, so the 1st is missing. But it's okay, I'll just put a note under if I have anything going on the 1st. Then on the space below, I decided to write a verse from the scriptures saying, "The hair on his head was white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire." And that's from the book of Revelations 1:14. And that completes this whole spread. Alright, let's move on to the next spread on my setup. I wanted to paint a large illustration. It is going to have a little interactive aspect to it, so I needed a separate paper for the painting. This is a vellum board, by the way. It is 180 GSM, and I find it absorbing watercolors nicely without having to use a heavier paper, making the pages bulky for the layout we're making here. This was an A4 size, but I already cut it to the notebook size, so it's easy to clip them here. This is just temporary, and this will help putting the paper in place and not get wrinkly. So our illustration here will have a similar look, but instead of houses, we are painting shops. We are still using the same color palette. The cover page would be like a warm-up for me, and since this will have a similar composition, I'm supposed to start with the decorations again, but I mindlessly picked up yellow and painted the walls. But I realized it after painting the left side, so I cleaned my brush to focus on painting the decor first. And still, I picked up green and painted the garland and Christmas trees, which is supposed to be the red ribbons and bubbles. But I went ahead and just skipped the spaces for the ribbons. Also, I realized I painted the trees in a different way on the cover page where the strokes were mainly downwards. So here, I painted them in different directions so they look more natural this time. The windows are quite bigger, so some decorations are visible from the insides, so we are also painting them. I continued painting the walls with light yellow after that, and before I forget it, I painted the red ribbons. Okay, now it's time to paint the exterior. I'm pretty much just following my sketch here. The walls will pretty much have the same colors, light yellow, burnt sienna, and Van Dyke brown. What I do is using all three colors together, but not fully blending them. So I have light yellow here for the base, light consistency of burnt sienna for the mid-tone, which is also mostly applied on the corners, light consistency of Van Dyke brown to paint shading, and some light textures that resemble bricks. And a thicker consistency of Van Dyke brown again to paint the shadows under the moldings and the snowy parts. Now we are basically just doing the same technique for the walls, but you can also play around, make each building or each level their own color. On the lower level of this side, we have a shop with large window. We are painting the inside with warm lighting. Then we also have another one here. A street lamp must be present as well, so we are painting one just below the molding. The placements of the building, by the way, is done with the interaction in mind. So I will be cutting this into half later, so I measured everything first. I also made sure that the end of the building at the left is aligned to the center of the notebook. Then the rest of the composition is on the right side of the spread. The white spaces are the areas that will be glued on the pages later. I can actually paint the entire spread, but I decided to make the bigger space here on the left functional and tie everything together by making use of the colored papers. Since I sketched this beforehand, some of you might be wishing to see how I did it. But what I can say is, in art, there's what we call perspective technique, where we create the illusion of three-dimensional space and depth on a two-dimensional surface. It is used to make a drawing look realistic and have form, distance, and dimension. So here the paper is two-dimensional surface, or in other words, it is flat. Then I used a perspective technique to draw something that looked three-dimensional, if that makes sense. There's also different types of perspective. In this specific illustration, I used a frontal perspective or one-point perspective. There's so much to tackle about this topic, and this will require a lot of time to make it comprehensive, but I'm sure there are lots of resources here on YouTube and on Google, but one basic rule I can share is that the farther an object is, the smaller its perspective image. So as you can see, the farthest building in the middle is smaller, and the buildings on the sides are parallel to each other. A ruler is also a friend when drawing these kinds of illustrations, so make use of it. I'm sorry if I'm skipping some parts of the painting process here, but I hope you already got the idea. For example, I already painted the windows on the upper levels and 2 more lamps off camera. We also painted some parts of the pathway using raw umber. Then everything else is covered by snow. This time I won't be covering the pathway with gouache since the paper has no dots and I managed to skip the areas on the buildings, but we will only use this to add snow on the trees and decorations and to also paint some shadows, especially towards the edges of the buildings, using Payne's Gray. Likewise, we are painting the shadows on the decor with a darker shade of green so the snow pop more nicely. This painting is finally done. It's time to cut it in half. I'm using an X-Acto knife and a cutting mat, but you can also cut it with scissors. Then we're going to score the edges of the painting on both sides to create nice and clean folds. You can use any tool that has a dull edge, for example, a palette knife or pen with dried ink. I cut an inch of this page, the same thickness as the folded space of the right half of the painting, before gluing the back side on both of them. I'm using a double-sided tape for this, and it's okay to have a little space on the middle so it's easy to close the notebook. Next, we're gluing these colored papers that are cut to the sizes of the white spaces. And that's the interactive part of this. We will have spreads inside to set up, but let's create my habit trackers on this side first. It won't be interactive this time, but a basic layout is always a great option. So we are drawing 4 mini calendars using our white gel pen and paint the first row of the habit titles with red, just like the bigger calendar on the cover spread. Then we're simply writing the habits header above. I wasn't able to write each habits I want to track on the mini calendars, but I did write them after. Okay, let's move on to the inner spreads behind the painting. On the left is for listing my shop events and content for December. I will be doing some end of year sale on my shop, so definitely check it out. As for the content, I have been doing December video series called Tottocharizze Treats here on YouTube for the last 3 years, where I put several videos with giveaways. They had specific dates to go live. This year, I plan to release several videos with giveaways here and there, but I won't be following an upload schedule just to give myself grace because this year has been a little more hectic, but I'll try to release them during weekends. I already have most of the videos filmed and they're just waiting to be edited, but I hope you look forward to them. I simply decorated these with the same colored paper and some round stickers from Paper Monogatari by Anna of Journal Away. The colors definitely speak autumn, but it's okay. I'm also using this grid decorative paper from her shop to decorate the next spread that will be used for my playlist. Like I said in my previous Plan With Me video, I won't be doing weekly spreads for this month as well, so a catch-all task list makes more sense to me during a very busy time. My devotional plan will also be taken somewhere else because I'm currently taking an e-course called Walking in Miracles by Apostle Catherine Crick. The spiritual teachings here are so meaty but so simple to understand at the same time. It is something I've never heard many churches teach, so I encourage you to check it out as well. And before we go, I also want to announce that I'm doing a cyber sale on my shop starting right now. The discounts range from 15 to 20% on all products. It is my biggest sale yet. You can also see snippets of my 2025 bullet journal setup called Flourish in Elegance, a mini planner collection to help you get started for the new year. My website link is on the description box below. I thank you all so much for your unending support. Okay, that finally completes our Wintry Streets themed December 2024 bullet journal setup. We have come to the end of this video, so let's do a quick flip through of all the pages we made here. I really hope you enjoyed this Plan With Me video and gave you inspirations for new layouts and maybe winter paintings to practice on your own cozy time this season. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. My 2025 bullet journal setup is also coming soon, as well as my 2024 bullet journal flip through, so I hope you are looking forward to all my content this December. Please leave a like and let's stay connected by subscribing to this channel if you want to see more art and bullet journaling videos from me. Thank you so much for your time watching. Take care and have a wonderful holiday season. Bye everyone. Love you all.